Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. Two things, all the books in the background, they're for another video, but I had to set them up on the bed because there's a lot of them. So don't mind them, they're just going to be there for the time being. And the second thing is my brain hurts because I have to proofread all of these reports this weekend. I'm not looking forward to it because it's a long weekend and I would rather write 4 classes worth of reports than proofread them. I'm just going to put that out there. This is me having one of those moments of going, why do I do the job that I do? Because I would rather write all of this than read it. Because let's face it, that's going to take away from my reading time this weekend. And that's what I really want, is my reading time. And I'm not happy about that. So please wish me luck because who knows what I'm going to be like at the end of 2 days of reading this. All right, that's enough whining. This is my reading week from the 4th until the 9th of June. And it was a pretty busy week. My parents had their anniversary this week. There's a whole lot of stuff going on at work that's made things very interesting, but I did get some reading done and I specifically got a lot of reading done for the Queer Lit Readathon, so I'm very happy about that. The first thing I do want to mention is that I'm currently buddy reading Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall with Bree. I'm only about 7 chapters in at this point because reports, but I am absolutely loving this book. I won't say too much about the plot, except I will say that the voice and the character narration in this story is just delightful. The narrator is, well, I think they say that they're called a hobgoblin, but I'm not quite sure specifically what they are, some kind of pixie, and they are delightfully disdainful of the human race, and quite frankly that reflects my feelings sometimes, so I'm loving the narrator. Alright, so then jumping into the books that I have read and finished, I did read In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. This is his most recent release. I read this for the Folklore Bingo Board Challenge in the Queer Lit Readathon. This is a very sci-fi dystopian Pinocchio retelling, and it is about a human who lives with a group of robots in the forest and they don't really have any connection to the outside world. Victor is our human. He has been raised by Geo, who is an android and has lived around robots his whole life, but he also knows to stay sort of in the safety of their little home area. And then one day he finds the broken body of another android in one of the dumping grounds and he brings it home and he fixes it up. And that android's name is Hap, and Hap has a history with Geo, and when Geo is taken from them, Victor, Hap, Nurse Ratched, and Rambo, who is this tiny little anxiety-ridden robot who just owns my soul, set off to try and find Geo and bring him back. Victor begins to learn a lot more about the world, about his history, and how he fits into the greater scheme of the world. This book I felt was a fraction too long. I think there were certain parts of the story that probably could have been sped through, but it is TJ Klune and he does tend to spend time on those little moments. So do with that what you will. I really enjoyed it. I actually quite like this style of sci-fi writing where it is very much driven by the characters. Is some of the commentary on humans and the way that humans are awful some of the time, a bit on the nose probably, but I think it's also a commentary on the way that we treat things and the way that we take things for granted, in particular the things that we have created to help our lives. And this is sort of what happens when those things rise up and no longer do what you want them to do. So I really enjoyed it. I love this edition of it. It is absolutely beautiful. I had a good time. Then I read volume 1 of Magical Boy by Tay Kao, which is a graphic novel. This is about Max, who comes from a family of superheroes known as Magical Girl. Max was born female but identifies as male, and suddenly when the bad guys start coming back into the world, he finds that he has to take on the family's legacy of becoming a superhero, except it keeps trying to dress him as a girl and he's having none of it. He has a really great support group of friends. His dad is incredibly supportive. It takes his mum a lot longer to come around, and in fact we probably don't get that resolution in this volume, but we slowly see as Max becomes more confident how the powers begin to respond to him and respect him as Magical Boy, which was great. Like, that was the part that I really loved, and I loved having that really awesome friendship group. So I read this for the Queer Lit Readathon prompts for Trans Joy, but it would also fit queer friends as well. Then I read Rookie Mistake by Anna Zabo and LA Witt. This was for my choose my own category. It was a queer hockey romance. So it is an MM romance. There is a non-binary friend and Anna Zabo also uses they them pronouns. And this book is the closest book that I have found in terms of the feelings that it gave me that are similar to the rest of the story by Tal Bauer. It's not exactly the same, but like, I was just deeply engrossed in this story from the word go, and I was deeply invested in these characters. There is an extraordinary amount of hockey on the page as well, which is also what bumps all hockey romances up in my ranking, because believe it or not, I know this is probably hard to believe because this is not generally what people say, but I don't read the hockey for the smut. I don't. I actually really enjoy having the sport on page, and having great steamy scenes is fantastic, but I actually am interested in the dynamics of people in playing in teams and things like that. So this worked for me because that was definitely a very, very big, very prominent part of the story. It is about a rookie NHL player called Isaac who joins a team, and he takes a lot of things on his shoulders because he feels like he has to prove himself or he's going to, you know, get knocked out of the team. And he is reassured by one of his idols, Julian, and Julian has been playing probably for 6 or 7 years at this point in time, and he remembers what it was like to be a rookie. And so he's very supportive, despite the fact that maybe he and Isaac haven't really spoken a lot since Isaac joined the team. But then they begin to become friends and they start flirting with one another. And Julian is really wary because when he was a rookie, he was in a relationship with an older member on the team, and it was a very abusive relationship. And he is deeply concerned about repeating the things that this player did because he was a horrible, horrible, horrible person. So this is sort of where I got a lot of similarities to the rest of the story in terms of players abusing their power over people who do not have the same level of power within an organization. So this does deal a lot with trauma from SA as Julian tries to work through his feelings because he absolutely head over heels falls for Isaac, and the same in reverse. A really cool element in this story is that there is a dom-sub relationship in here, and it is Isaac who takes on the dominant role as Julian prefers to be submissive and directs a lot of this learning for Isaac. And it was very well done because alongside this relationship development, we have Julian working through his past, we have this commentary on toxic co-workers, you have a lot of sport being played. Julian ends up going to the All-Stars weekend and takes Isaac along with him. And so we meet a lot of other players and we see that this is not something that is an isolated event. It's something that is quite prevalent and everyone is trying to work through that. It is also a very steamy romance. So that is in there, but I loved the character work in this book. It was so well done and I can't wait to read the second book in the series. I have heard that it is not as good as the first one, but I'm kind of open-minded about that because a lot of the characters that we meet in this first book, I was really interested in reading about. So then I read Love Kills Twice by Rien. This was for the MSpec prompt for the Queerlit Readathon. This is a romantic suspense story. It does have a resolution, but these characters continue on into book 2. It is about Justine, who hires Campbell, who is an assassin, to kill her husband. And she doesn't know initially that her husband has also attempted to hire Campbell to kill her. But Campbell knows all of this and he has done his research and he is not very impressed with Justine's husband, and so he takes Justine's contract, and along the way they begin to spend time together and they begin to fall for one another. Part of the problem of this is that Campbell has to make sure that they do not fall for her because of their own rules around interacting with clients, but of course they do fall for her and their relationship is pretty steamy, but is then complicated by her finding out that her husband tried to initially hire Campbell. Things get fairly messy. And I'm not sure I would continue the series. I actually quite liked this story, but I don't really feel compelled to continue reading about this couple, but I did enjoy it, and it was a fairly short read. I also read Nimona by N.D. Stevenson. This is another graphic novel, and this is about Nimona, who turns up and requests to be Ballister Blackthorn's supervillain sidekick, because he is the bad guy in this world, and he has a reputation, and, you know, maybe or maybe not, he sort of sits in this grey area of being a morally grey character who is aware that there is some shady things going on with the government and he is constantly trying to undermine them. But Nimona is quite a reckless character, a bit of a loose cannon. They do a whole lot of things that they want, and we begin to realise that maybe Nimona, who presents as a shapeshifter, is not quite what they appear to be. And it was really fun. Like, I really liked the commentary on it. I had absolutely no idea what the story was about going into it, so that was a surprise, and I quite like the fact that it was a bit of a supervillain, but with a twist story. I also read The Play of His Life by Amy Aislin. This is a novella-length hockey romance or hockey-adjacent romance. We have Christian, who goes home for the holidays to spend it with his mum, and his mum sends him out on an errand that happens to put him in the path of his former best friend slash ex-boyfriend and former hockey player Riley, who was injured and so lost his pro playing career and has ended up starting a bakery and lives back in their hometown. And they haven't spoken to each other for years. Their split was sort of because they were constantly separated. There was a lot of long distance stuff going on, and then a lot of lack of communication about what they wanted from each other's relationship. So it sort of just fizzled out, and then they haven't been in contact. But of course, once they accidentally run into each other at Riley's bakery, they begin to reconnect and they begin to work through their history and what happened and their feelings and whether or not they still have those for each other. And it was actually very, very sweet because it looks at life after a professional hockey career and the willingness to go after what you want. And the last book that I read was another hockey romance. It was called Play to Win by Kelly Jamieson. It is part of the Win series. It's the first book in that series, which is kind of like a hockey family dynasty series. And when I finished this, I sent Izzy a message about this book, which was basically that this is about a general manager for a hockey team who marries a woman he meets on his last night in Vegas before he travels to Los Angeles to take on this role. And he marries her because her twin brother has a gambling problem and has sent bookies after her to collect money that she no longer has because her brother has stolen all of her money. And so her life is in danger. Teo decides to marry her and offers for her to come with him to Los Angeles because his brother has slept with his ex-girlfriend, and so he doesn't want to turn up on his own when he gets back into town because there is a massive family feud going on with his family because his grandfather is now his boss. His grandfather owns the hockey team that he's going to be the general manager for, and Teo's own father has another hockey team that is the rival for this team. And so of course the grandfather and the father don't talk, and so Teo is stuck in the middle. And I was sitting there going, this is like a train wreck. It is the most soap opera of soap opera hockey romance books. But in that sense, it was kind of fun because you kind of just have to go along for the ride because you just get thrown curveballs straight away. And I was like, okay, like, is it the greatest thing ever written? Probably not. But was it hella entertaining? Absolutely it was, because if I listed everything that happened in this book, that would probably be a 20-minute long video. So in terms of things that I was just not expecting to get from a book, Play to Win was definitely up there, and you know, that was a pretty fun and entertaining ride, I have to say. All right, so those are the books that I have read in the last week. In the comments, I would love to know if you have read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a star emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.